Moorhead, Kevin Van Dam, and Takahiro Omori. It all starts right now on FLW Outdoors. Hello and welcome to FLW Outdoors. I'm Carlton Wing with Taylor Carr and Hank Parker, and today we're joining you from Kentucky Lake, the 5th stop on the Walmart FLW Tour.
We better hurry, guys. This water is right behind us. In a few minutes, it might be at our shoes. Hank, this lake is coming up like crazy.
These four guys, this is the 5th stop, and they have had no normality. It's either a drain lake or a flooded lake, and so we got a flooded lake all over again.
There was Everstart held here 2 weeks ago. David Young of Mayfield, Kentucky won with 2015. But does that tell us anything, given how much the lake has come up?
You know, they caught those fish out of bushes, and now those same bushes that they caught in the Everstart tournament are probably, the fish caught the fish out of are probably 8 or 9 foot deep, so now that's deep water structure.
In the Land O'Lakes Angler of the Year race, he's had great success here on Kentucky Lake. He won the last FLW event here. He won the Everstart event here. He's won several BFLs as well, and goes into this tournament with a 51-point lead in the Land O'Lakes Angler of the Year race over David Dudley, who's in 2nd place. Then it's Tommy Biffle, Andy Morgan, and Mickey Bruce. A lot of attention and a lot of pressures on Dan Moorhead.
Well, you know, he's got a great lead, but he's not comfortable with that lead. I talked to him just the other day, and he wants more, so I don't know if he's going to add pressure to himself or not, but that'll make it more difficult if he does.
There's a lot of pressure on Dan, but a lot of pressure on a lot of the other anglers as well. The top 48 pros qualify for the Jacobs Cup, and this is event number 5 of a 6-event regular season. Top 48 pros qualify for the $1.5 million Jacobs Cup, and then the top 100 qualify to come back next year. So a lot of pros in this tournament jockeying for position.
I've talked to a lot of the guys, and most of the fishermen that have been in this business for years and years are saying the Jacobs Cup is the single most important event of their life. They want to make it, and they want to make it big time. So like you say, only 48 are going to make it. The pressure is on.
Speaking of big events, you had one fairly recently. You got inducted into the Pro Bass Fishing Hall of Fame. Congratulations. That must have been a big honor for you.
It was, and it's great. You know, the negative part about that is you got to be 50 years old to get there, so you have to be an old man. But it was quite an honor, and I'm glad to be there. That's pretty neat.
As I've gotten older, and now that I'm not a part of the sport and I don't compete regularly, I look back, and the memories are what's important, and the people I met, and the opportunities that I've had to know people and meet people through fishing. I don't know of a greater sport. I don't know of a greater fraternity to be a part of.
The other inductees with Hank were Don Butler, Tommy Martin, Tom Mann, and TV producer Jerry McKenna. Another big honor in your life. You're now a granddad. Congratulations.
Hank Jr.'s wife had a little girl, Wendy, so we're excited about that. It gives me 4 grandkids, man. They keep me young.
All right, back to fishing now. We're going to meet 3 anglers today that you talked to, and they have different approaches to this water, Kentucky Lake.
It's going to be really interesting because they all 3 fish differently, and they look at this. Normally, you know, when the water rises, the fish follow it up. So we fish with Kevin Van Dam, and that's his philosophies as a whole. And then we fished also with Dan Moorhead, and Dan's got a little something else figured out that's going to be kind of unique, and I think that gives him some advantages. And then Takahiro, he's just trying to find something solid. He hadn't found a whole lot of fish when I fished with him, so it's going to be interesting to see how these guys do.
Well, we have a lot to look forward to on this edition of FLW Outdoors. When we come back, we'll preview Kentucky Lake. Today's Field and Stream trivia question: which American tire company developed the first plastic worm? Sir, which American tire company developed the first plastic worm? The answer, B.F. Goodrich in 1935. Welcome back to FLW Outdoors. Coming up, Hank Parker will fish with Kevin Van Dam, Dan Moorhead, and Takahiro Omori. First, let's get a preview of Kentucky Lake.
Well, this is a lake the FLW has been to 3 times in the past. The last time was 1998, but it's never been even nearly this high. Keep in mind as you watch this, the lake has even risen some since we talked to the anglers you're about to see. Hang on.
Oh, get in the boat, honey.
Kentucky and Barkley Lakes have the potential to be the best fishery the FLW visits this year.
Few spots in the country give anglers a better chance to catch bass in the 3 to 7 pound range. Kentucky Lake is the largest man-made reservoir in the eastern U.S. and backs up the Tennessee River some 180 miles. The canal connects it with Barkley Lake, fed by the Cumberland River, which parallels Kentucky for some 50 miles. Combined, that's almost 3,400 miles of shoreline and more than 200,000 acres of water. FLW pros generally give the lakes rave reviews. Rob Kilby says he loves the miles of shoreline and how the lakes fish so big, making it easy to get away from other competitors. Tommy Biffle says the lakes are full of bushes and big fish. Tony Couch says the flipping bite will dominate. Mickey Bruce says it's a real good fishery, and he's found fish in bushes too. And Bill Chapman says he loves all the lake's fishable cover, and like Kilby, the fact that it rarely gets crowded. For an idea of the bushes and cover they're talking about, go back to the FLW's last trip to Kentucky Barkley in 1998, when much of the best action came close to dense cover. Look for anglers to rely on creature baits, jigs, and spinner baits.
Little one.
So how good is this fishery? Later in the show, you'll get a rare glimpse of what's beneath the surface of Kentucky Barkley. Suffice it to say, it's a special place.
What makes it unique, I guess, would just be the vastness of it. All the acreage, all the embayments that there are to fish. Kentucky Lake is probably more known for quality bass, where Barkley Lake is more known for quantity.
We should have got a bite. Right, they're there.
Not many guys know Kentucky and Barkley better than pros Dan Moorhead and Terry Bolton, a couple of Paducah boys who we followed as they fished a buddy tournament last summer. That 5-pounder came fishing deep. The lakes will fish a lot differently in the spring.
In May, when we're here for the big FLW and in the Everstart, the fish are going to be, you know, shallow in the backs of the bays, trying to spawn, or just done spawning, so current's really not going to play a role.
There's much more on Dan Moorhead and his domination of Kentucky Lake coming up later in the show.
Oh, yeah, there's one. That's what we're looking for right there. Oh, there's one. There's one.
And you'll hear a lot more of that in the days to come.
Your banana boat outdoor conditions call for moderate temperatures with highs in the 70s, lows in and around the upper 50s. We'll start with cloudy skies, but work toward a 60% chance of thunderstorms by Saturday. The UV forecast is for 1s and 2s throughout the tournament. Coming up on FLW Outdoors, Hank Parker joins some of the top fishermen in the game. Kevin Van Dam, Dan Moorhead, and up next, Yamaha pro Takahiro Omori.
Hey, welcome back to FLW Outdoors. I tell you, we got a challenge today, 2 challenges. Number 1 is to get Takahiro Omori here to understand my broken English and me to understand his broken English. I speak Southern and he speaks Japanese English, so we can figure this out together. I'm gonna tell you, I've always said about a tournament fisherman, to be great, you gotta have a passion for the sport. And this guy has definitely got a passion for the sport. He moved over here from Japan, came to America, couldn't even speak English, because he loved to fish so much. And he's done great on the tournament circuit, and he's a very versatile fisherman, and we're going to understand how to catch fish out of Kentucky Lake when you show us how to do it.
Okay, we can try.
All right, I like that. You know, Takahiro, everything that I have read about fishing in Japan, it's all about finesse fishing, trying to catch smaller fish in clear water and not as much cover. So how do you deal with coming over here and all of a sudden you got all this massive cover? What do you, I mean, did you have to change your whole fishing style?
Sure, it's a big difference. You know, and here in the States, it had a more bigger fish and a heavy cover. And in Japan was for fish for the smaller fish, like 6-pound test line and a string rod. I have to change everything.
What's the average size of a lake in Japan as far as surface acres?
I said like 5 mile long, 2 mile wide.
About like a small bay on Kentucky Lake.
See here, how big here? Like 100 miles.
Takahiro, I think about you coming from Japan over here and having a dream to fish a bass tournament. When you won the tournament on Lake Martin, how in the world did that feel?
That was the best day of my life.
That is awesome, isn't it?
That was great. The winning the FLW and that 100,000 helped me a lot.
Have you gotten over that yet, or is it still kind of special to you when you think about it?
I'm still remember like yesterday, but it's been like 2 years.
So you're ready to win again?
I try. I fished with a hunk poker today. It's an amazing feeling to me. Just fish with him. Like when I was in Japan, I was like, I was 16 years old. I was in high school.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah.
Boy, you're making me feel old, really bad old.
But,
I'm only 34. I'm just 2 years older than you.
well, I was 16 in high school. I really want to fish like hunk poker. So I read the magazine. Any magazine I saw, only a few magazines in Japan talk about bass fishing. And back then, they let the hunk poker all the time. Because I grew up in Japan to fish totally different stuff like this and fishing spinnerbait. Now I have a question to the Hank. How can you fish shallow water like this in a spinnerbait?
Well, in Japan, do you fish the big spinner baits, or what kind of baits you use?
We were fishing a smaller profile spinnerbait.
You know, when I grew up, I fished on a lake that was really, really muddy in the spring of the year. We used spinner baits when the water was muddy. Then Bobby Murray turns around and wins the Bassmaster Classic, the first one ever held, out at Lake Mead in crystal clear water. So I thought, hey, you can catch a fish on a spinnerbait even in clear water. And the more I fish them, the more I've learned to change blades. You know, a lot of times when you're fishing pretty clear water, you can put on Indiana blades or willow leaf blades and go to smaller blades with bigger, heavier heads and fish it much, much, much faster. And I find that is very effective in clear water, is to just go to smaller blades on a heavy head and fish it really, really fast. Ah, there he is. Oh, you don't get a penalty. Good fish. Good fish.
Yeah.
Ooh,
I need to save it for the tournament on this.
that wasn't very nice. I wasn't ready. You didn't wait on me.
Well, for me, fishing all started when I was really little. I went fishing all the time with my dad, and the only reason I went fishing was to be with my father. So that made me feel lucky just to begin with, to be able to spend all that time with him.
I just can't wait. My daughter, she's getting old enough now where we're going to be doing some fishing together. We fish in ponds now. We walk the banks, and she likes to reel it in. I have to cast for her, but I don't know. It's time that we get to spend together.
So join us Saturday, June 7th, for a day of fishing and a whole lot more at your local Walmart store. It's something you and your kids will never forget. Checking results from the BFL Gulf Coast Division, the event held on the Tensaw River. Alan Swart of Pascagoula, Mississippi got the win with 8 pounds, 15 ounces. And the Texas Tournament Trail was on Lake Louisville, the season's only 2-day event, and Tommy Durham of Waxahachie, Texas got the win with 21 pounds, 11 ounces.
And welcome back to Walmart FLW Outdoors. We are previewing the Kentucky Lake event, the 5th stop on the FLW Tour.
And Taylor, 5 events into this 6-event regular season. It's kind of fun to take a look at the team standings now. Snickers is out in front. They've had a great year, anchored by the first victory on Okeechobee by Pat Fisher, nearly 15 points ahead of second place, Team Stanley. Then a nice tight battle for 3rd and 4th place between Castrol and Lowry's. Kellogg's is in 5th place, followed by Banana Boat in 6th place.
All right, so what does it take to win on Kentucky Lake? Well, we all know that few anglers know that better than Kentucky's own Dan Moorhead.
this has been a year that I hope I never wake up. Whatever I'm doing, I hope I keep doing it, and just ride it right on into the Jacobs Cup.
Dan Moorhead, minutes before winning the Walmart Open on Beaver Lake and recording the biggest payday of his career in what has been his best season ever. A whirlwind of 3 top 10 finishes in 4 events and a commanding lead in the Land O'Lakes Angler of the Year race. Yet as incredible as this year's been, it doesn't rival Moorhead's first FLW win. The one on his home lake, the one his father got to see firsthand. And it's a story Dan Moorhead loves to tell.
One of the best memories I've had in my fishing career, is the FLW I won at home here on Kentucky Lake. Dad was following me that morning. He was, with me in my every move, and he had a friend of his with him in the boat, and then a little later in the day, he was in the camera boat. And so he was there in close proximity with me, and he got to watch my every move. He never talked to me. He didn't want to, bother my concentration or anything. It was special knowing I had my #1 fan right there with me at all times. Now, he's my faithful shadow. Love him to death. We hunt and fish, and we're always doing something together. More like a best friend than a dad. At the end, he left to go get a seat, a good seat on stage and everything, and to watch the weigh-in. And at that time, he knew what I had, and he also knew what the other competitors had, and he didn't think I had enough to win. And at that time, I didn't. And when he left, I pulled up on that last spot and caught a 5-pounder and a 4-pounder and a 3-pounder almost back-to-back cast. And that's what gave me the win, put me over the top. And he didn't know that until the weigh-in, so the drama and the build-up and everything was really something to watch. Oh, God, please stay on. Oh, my God. Yeah! You betcha.
Doc Moorhead knew what the win meant to Dan and his career, not just because of the years of fishing together, but because Doc had been a pro angler, too. He even had an 11th place finish in an FLW event. Doc was also an orthopedic surgeon. Yet when Dan decided on a pro fishing career in 1995, there was no handout. Dan went to his banker and borrowed $50,000.
When I married my wife, I had $4,000 left of that money. I was 46 grand in the hole. I got fortunate and I won the Potomac River Top 100. I paid everything off, and I've never owed anybody a dime since.
And now, 8 years later, Dan's a 2-time winner on tour and sitting on top of the fishing world. Back to the Walmart Open, and the moments before he got that second win, there was one thing missing. Doc Moorhead wasn't there.
But right now, he's in Walmart in Benton, Kentucky, and I know he's watching me. Captain, I love you. You are #1 and will always be my hero. I just love it. I owe him everything. He never left me on the bank. We've always fished together.
And a lot of folks would be surprised if Dan Moorhead is not a big factor on this lake. And you'll see why in just a minute. He fished with Hank Parker and caught some big fish. Dan Moorhead on the water with Hank Parker next on FLW Outdoors.
I'm assuming it's your ultimate goal to win Angler of the Year.
Well, it is. I mean, that's a crown jewel that I've never had the chance at before. So I mean, that's important to me. But my goal and my focus right now is on winning the Jacobs Cup. And I know that sounds silly, but $500,000. That's a mouthful.
I like that river too.
Good. Mark a map for me. Well, I'm just banking on about 28 years of knowledge fishing this lake. This will be won on a jig. There's no question about that.
All right, wait a minute. We're going to quote this.
I do believe that.
I think your home field advantage is about 6 foot underwater.
In some ways, I mean, it all depends. If my pattern holds true, I know the bushes, I know still where the bushes are and they don't, so.
There's a fish.
He's not much of one, but I got him.
He's all yours.
I think he went and caught another one.
Well, the old bush.
Another keeper. Look at that.
How about that?
Every time we start talking serious, the fish interrupts us.
Well, I'm trying to disrupt your thought pattern where you'll leave me a bush.
Sounds like a banjo string back there when you jerk.
I get pretty excited. This is one of my favorite lakes in the whole world.
That's mine too.
I think it's one of the most beautiful lakes. I think it's got a great fish population. And when you flip that jig down in the bush, you never know what's going to be on the other side, and it just is a rush.
There he is. I saw him.
I had him.
He's about 2-pounder, look like.
I think he's about 7 or 8.
Okay. Flip that bush right there, Hank. There's got to be one right there. You got everything you want here, see? I knew there'd be one there.
You called it?
Yeah, you're welcome on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that. You're an awesome guide, Dan.
Wait till you get the bill. Damn. I don't know if that was, it just got heavy and you got me trigger happy, so I jerked.
Look at this. You go, boy.
Everybody says they've dubbed me the next Jimmy Houston the way I kiss them all, so I guess I've got to hold true to that, huh?
You kiss them?
I kiss
Good gracious.
I love every one of them.
I'm going to tell you something about Jimmy, just between me and you.
This ought to be good.
Jimmy does a little French kiss on him.
No, I ain't going that far.
Of course, what else can you say about a 57-year-old man with bangs? I mean, you'd expect that, wouldn't you? Okay.
I didn't miss mine.
He caught him. That was my fish, and it's a big one, a real big one. Danny, you got it figured out, man. You know, I picked you to win this whole thing. And then I got worried about it when we got all this water influx. But now that I fish with you, I'm not worried. I think I made a good choice.
Well, I appreciate it. I feel pretty good about it, and we'll see how it goes.
Now, we did all this cherry picking and got these little bushes. I'm fixing to go fish with Kevin. You think we're going to slow down and fish these little bushes?
He'll part your hair, he'll fish you fast.
Hey, coming up next, we got Kevin Van Dam. Stay with us.
Checking results from the RCL Walleye League in the Minnesota division, the winner Chuck Dube from Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. His weight was 21 pounds, 7 ounces.
FLW Outdoors continues from Kentucky Lake. I'm Taylor Carr with Carlton Wayne.
And we just talked about the RCL Walleye League. The big boys on the RCL Tour just completed their second event of the 2003 season. Here's what happened on Lake Sharp in Pierce, South Dakota.
It's day 3 here at Lake Sharp in the RCL Tour event out of Pierce, South Dakota. Semi-final round, we sent 20 boats out this morning, and 2 patterns are starting to emerge. Towards the dam, we've got colder water, about 46, 47 degrees, and we've got the jig and live bait pitchers up here pitching the shoreline. Now, another contingent of the semi-finalists went on down the reservoir, some 30, even 40 miles down, and they're basically pulling crankbaits in the warmer mid-50 degree water down there. We're going to find out at weigh-in today which pattern is working here at Lake Sharp, and we'll get these anglers into the final round tomorrow.
The weigh-in at a no-call event reveals not only the fish-catching ability of the pros, but which pros correctly picked which keepers to keep and which to toss back. Longtime veteran Mark Martin brought up a 6-fish limit, but missed the cut by 4 ounces. The cut line proved to be 9 pounds, 15 ounces, turned in by Minnesota's Richard Nassick, a finalist at last year's RCL Championship. The 3 top pros heading into the final round were South Dakota's own Mac McComsey, Indiana's Jeff Kester, and another RCL finalist, Joe Wilson, out of Rolling Stone, Minnesota. Saturday's final round brought rain and wind, and most of the finalists caught a little hail.
Before our next cast, the wind picked up, and we didn't know what to do. Tried trolling my sandbar there, come back, tried anchoring. We tried everything, and that wind, can't stand it.
Local angler Darrell Swank held the lead through most of the weigh-in until another local pro, Mac McComsey, took the stage.
13 pounds, 1 ounce. 13-1.
McComsey's lead held for the win and a $50,000 first-place check, plus a fully rigged Ranger boat. His co-angler Chad Wisco won $15,000. In spite of the victory, the winner was tight-lipped about his secret bait.
What's been your best bait there?
Jig and plastic.
What kind of plastic? Now, let's be a little more specific. Come on.
Mark, I can't tell you that.
They're gonna find out anyway.
No, I don't think they will.
You know, the walleye as a species is found all over this country. In fact, they're in this lake, Kentucky Lake.
Of course, our anglers this week will be focusing on the bass, and that's one of the jobs of the Kentucky Department of Natural Resources. And we spent some time on the water with some fishery biologists to study how they maintain the health of Kentucky Lake. If you ever feared subtle movements and noises in a boat may spook fish away from your area, this may disprove those thoughts. We had no trouble locating plenty of keepers directly under our boat in spite of a gas-powered generator bolted directly to the flooring of an aluminum boat. We weren't exactly racing across the water in a Ranger, but the ride was thrilling in a different way. The Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources utilizes a little shock value as it monitors the health of Kentucky Lake.
We do 30-minute runs. At the end of every 30 minutes, we stop and we work up the fish. We measure them, weigh them. You know, we can look for parasites, any types of problems that we see with the bass, poor condition, and then we will release them back. And from those numbers, we've got 16 years of data where we've done this for 16 consecutive years, and we can follow the trends of the bass fishery.
The electricity temporarily stuns the fish, allowing them to float to the surface, where biologists can then study their size and health. Within a few minutes, the biologists have what they need, and the fish are awake and ready to return.
2003, we ought to see a lot of fish right at 15 inches. Again, we're recovering from a few poor year classes. The number of 20-inch and larger fish are down, but there ought to still be a large number of fish that have just broken over to 15-inch.
One of the more entertaining aspects of this task is the frustrated angler who can't catch the fish that are right there.
And we put many fishermen to shame. If they start complaining, we can ask them where they fished, and we can go back through that same area that they just fished and find fish. It's just they couldn't get them to bite.
Thanks to the dedicated efforts of fishery biologists like Paul Rister, Kentucky Lake continues to be one of the great places in America to fish.
And you were fishing real slow in that shock boat. Somebody who's known for fishing fast is Kevin Van Dam. We'll find out how fast when he fishes with Hank Parker coming up next.
Kevin is the one guy that breaks every rule in tournament fishing. I wish he would have been here when I was a kid. Everybody said, you fish too fast. If you just slow down, it would amaze you how many more fish you can catch. Well, here's a guy that fishes twice as fast as I've ever fished and catches more fish than I ever caught. So he breaks all the rules and still catches all the fish.
Oh, God. There's one. Good fish.
Catch him. Good. There. A one-eyed fish, a no-eyed fish. No, one-eyed.
Missing one eye.
One-eyed.
Look at that. Worm hook.
Worm hook.
Somebody cut him off, and look at he's still going strong.
He bit again.
You got one? Oh. Oh, big one. They're schooling. Sure you can get some bites on him. There'll be some good fish.
No, but he's all right. He's about 4 or 5 pounds. 7 or 8 pounds.
Yeah. That's chunky.
He's a bass.
And he ate a spinnerbait.
Yeah, he's a spinnerbait. I think if you had to sit back at home and draw up a plan to say a perfect tournament for Kevin Van Dam, you just drew it up.
I might have not put the lake up quite this high, but...
I don't know. I think this is going to be your little deal. I'm throwing as fast as I can. I can't keep up with you. And I like to fish what most people call fast.
Well, when you're practicing, though, you know, I'm not trying to catch everyone that's in the area, just enough to know that, hey, that's a good place to be.
We're talking about your consistency. We talk about fishing fast. We talk about covering water. We talk about adversity. We talk about all the things that you've dealt with. You've been doing this, you're what, 35?
35.
You started fishing seriously when you were 16?
Yeah, I fished a lot of tournaments from when I got my driver's license, so.
How old were you when you won your first tournament in Michigan?
14.
God, it is amazing. And you're still just as fired up as you were when you were 14.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, like I say, if you don't love it, you know, you're not going to do well at it. But
I mean, I've always loved it. I've loved the competition of it, you know, from my first bass club days. You know, when you win that first tournament, you're done from that point on. You know, there's nothing, you know, second place just isn't going to get it anymore.
How many times did you finish second in the FLW?
I don't even want to count. 4 times, yeah. I have not won one of these yet, and it's been one of those things that's been real tough.
Is that eating on you just a little bit?
You know, the only thing you can do is put yourself in position, and sooner or later, it's got to happen, you know? I mean, if you keep knocking on the door.
You finish second more than anybody.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's better than third.
Yeah, that's right. Not quite as good as first.
Not quite as good as first.
You're working on it.
I've had my opportunities too. It's just, you know, it'll come.
Well, I believe that. While Kevin's fishing 95 miles an hour, we're going to go to a commercial break, but we'll be right back with more with Kevin Van Dam on flooded Kentucky Lake right after this. What do you think about changing baits? Do you think it's going to be one of these deals where you need to really fine-tune your spinnerbait? You think with this clear water you're going to have to come up with a different blade or bait combination, or you think just throw it and line it?
Well, I'm going to throw probably 3 or 4 different spinnerbaits, Hank. In this clear water, it's going to be real important to have something like this with a translucent skirt, and you know, something that looks real natural. And then in the areas, because there's a lot of areas where it's still real dirty, you know, then I want something bright, you know, chartreuse and thumper blades. And here I want something I can pull a little faster, so those willow blades, you know, they pull a little quicker, and they have a lot of flash, so that's good for that clear water.
What's that?
It's 9 foot deep right here. Still should catch something on this stuff, though.
Do you always use the long rods for even throwing a spinnerbait?
I don't. When I get where I'm really going tight, you know, and the water's dirty where I can make short casts, I'll use that. I use a 6-footer with a short handle. Like just like what you got right there, pretty much.
I can't believe that.
Straight handle, though, I like that.
Yeah.
But the shorter the rod, the more accurate you're going to be.
There he is, a big one.
But so much of this, you know, you're trying to make a long, accurate cast. That longer 2-handled rod works. But the key to a good spinnerbait rod is that right there, is having that flexible tip.
Being able to load it. You caught that fish out of a bush, you know.
Green bush. It was a big one, too.
Well, I used to tell everybody all the time, I said, now let me tell you, when you use a spinnerbait, you need to be able to do that little roll cast. You need a 5.5-foot rod with a pistol grip, unless you're Kevin Van Dam. He uses a 7-foot rod and 2-handed just as accurate. Well, I was going to tell you what, you got a little bit of work, but I think this tournament's going to be a turning point for you, and I think you're going to get there, and I'm excited about you getting there. I want to watch that.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to getting a chance to go there. So I'm going to give it my best this week. You know, the lake's really fitting my style of fishing, and it's just a matter of getting out there and finding the right areas and then executing during the tournament.
I don't want to bore you, but I do want to reiterate, and I don't know we were going so fast whether all the viewers heard it or not, but we talk about fishing a lake that is 7 foot above flood stage, and the way you like to fish and your style of fishing is just cover water. So I know your philosophy before I even ask you, so I don't want to ask a stupid question, but at the same time I want everybody, your philosophy is here, you just cover the water and cover the water and cover the water.
Yeah, you know, I mean, with so many, you can look back there, they got a million places to hide, so, you know, fishing fast and covering the water, trying to get that bait in front of as many fish as possible in a day's time is what I feel like, you know, looking for those aggressive fish is going to be the best way to do well when it's like this. If you fish real slow, if you're in an area where there's not many fish, you're not going to catch many. But if you can fish fast, even if there's not a lot of fish, you hit those key places, you know, those key ambush points, you know, the little trees on the points and the clumps of grass and that, you're going to get your bait in front of a lot of fish in a day's time.
Well, now this won't air until after the event is over, so your whole key is to find areas like this big field and this flat where you can reach the bank opposed to trying to come to the bank where all the jungle is.
you got to get, right now you got to get to the bank to catch fish. I mean, they're wanting to be shallow. Yeah, there's a few suspending in some of this cover, but look how much of it's there. It's just like a needle in a hay field there. Over here, at least you can get your lure to where a bass is at. And, you know, the more places that you can find like this that have a lot of shad in them and, you know, the right cover, you know, if you can get some, if maybe the wind's blowing into it, it's going to make it even that much better. So I'm trying to find areas all over the lake that have this kind of stuff that I can get to the bank with that good flooded cover, and hopefully I'll do well.
Well, I can tell you this, if I was in this field and I heard Kevin Van Dam was coming, I'd come out with my fins up if I were a bass.
I'm here with Pam Wood, one of the up-and-coming women on the FLW Tour. Pam, you're one of 6 of a growing number of women on the FLW Tour today. Tell me a little bit about how you got your start in bass fishing.
Actually, we have a little pond out behind our house where I grew up, and it seems like we were always walking out back. My grandmothers both loved to fish, and it seems like at least, you know, on every day, one of them was down there fishing, so we would take off down there and fish with them. And, you know, it just, our whole family loved to fish, and it just seemed like we always planned our family vacations around some type of body of water so that we could take our fishing poles and go fishing.
And you also have an interesting way, it makes it a lot of fun when you fish these events. You and your family split the winnings, actually.
Right. It makes it a little easier to come home with something in your pocket. What we do is whoever wins the check gets to keep half, and the other 2 get the other, you know, the 4th. And they also drive the camera boats, and we do the same thing with their camera boat earnings. You know, that way we all come home with a little something to offset our expenses.
I'll tell you, I really appreciate you spending some time with me today, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott.
Welcome back to FLW Outdoors and the home stretch of our preview of Kentucky Lake.
It's now time for your question in this week's Ask a Pro segment. Ivan Cardenas of Ontario, Canada writes, what types of bait do you use when flipping or pitching, and how do you rig them? Well, Ivan, your answer comes from Yamaha Pro Greg Carpenter.
Well, Ivan, more times than not, I'll pick up the Mismo tube to flip or pitch with. It's really been good to me. A lot of times I use 20 to 25 pound test line on the tube, usually a 1/4 to 3/8 ounce weight. I use a HP keeper hook. I put a glass rattle in the head of the tube to trigger a strike with. There was a bite right there. Usually when flipping a jig, I flip it in heavy mat, usually 12 to 16 foot deep on the edge of a hydrilla bed. That's when I generally use the jig on my flipping technique.
And Hank Parker rejoins us now out on the water today with 3 anglers, and you saw a lot of this lake, Hank, 3 different approaches to Kentucky Lake.
It is so interesting to be on this side and watch these guys. You look at Takahiro, he is really struggling. He didn't have any kind of pattern put together. Kevin's got a mindset that the fish are going to follow the water up, and he's determined to find those fish as they move up in the fields and the grass and the open water, eliminating all the banks with trees on it. And then Dan Moorhead is fishing the bushes that are underneath the water as if the fish didn't move up. So it's interesting to watch these 3 guys and put this whole thing together, but to see how it unfolds. You watch Takahiro. He will find some fish before this thing's over, and so will Kevin. Dan's got a good solid pattern now, and it's just interesting to see if it holds up.
I think you maybe think Dan's got this thing figured out pretty well.
I was very impressed with Dan. He told me exactly what was going to happen. He told me exactly the kind of cover he was looking for. We caught a 4 or 5 pounder. I lost 2 or 3 good fish. He caught one about 7 pounds. It was pretty impressive.
All right, it's time for our Snickers sneak preview now. You're going way out on a limb with this one, aren't you?
And I just pulled that name out of a hat. I had all the... This guy is hot as a bomb. I fished with his dad, Charles, here on this lake 25 years ago. So they've got a lot of knowledge, and Dan puts it all together. He's won here before, so how could you not pick Dan Moorhead to win?
Hank picks Dan Moorhead.
I'm going with Terry Bolton. Terry's another guy who has a good local knowledge of both Kentucky and Barkley Lakes. He's won on the Everstart side. He's won a 2nd place, a 3rd place, and a 4th place. So he's done well with that local knowledge, and he's hot. Last 2 tournaments, he's got top 30 finishes.
All right, I'm going to pick Wesley Strader. He knows the Tennessee River system. He's a good shallow water fisherman. He's done well on Kentucky Lake. I say watch for Wesley Strader.
And, of course, all three of these guys and the rest of our field hoping to qualify for that Jacobs Cup. We've talked a little bit about that for the anglers. $1.5 million on the line, but for the fans, this is going to be a great show in Richmond, Virginia.
Yeah, big trade show, 4 days going on in September. They should make plans to attend because this is going to be a thing you don't want to miss.
It's going to be great, and to watch these guys deal with the tidal water and all the adversities of a tidal river, just like they've dealt with flooded lakes all year, it's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds.
For information on the Jacobs Cup, go to FLWOutdoors.com or richmondva.org and make your plans to come to Richmond in September.
It will be historic, and thank you for joining us on this edition of FLW Outdoors. Be sure to tune in next week when we will crown a winner on Kentucky Lake.
またこの続きます。ごめん。チャンネルそのままで
It's
hard to speak Japanese, but speaking Japanese is more difficult now to me.
Some of them guys down there around 50th, like George Cochran, and a couple of the other guys that are right there on that bubble. You know, Kevin's moved in, and this tournament's real important for a bunch of guys.
And the FLW Championship in Richmond, Larry, is going to be a real big deal for the guys. To make that thing is a real honor, and it's going to be a big outdoor show. It's going to be a huge deal.
It really is. You know, if you qualify for the FLW Championship this year, it's automatic $12,200, I think, if I'm right on that. But the winner gets $500,000, so this is a big tournament.
Big money, $1.5 million overall. It's going to be great for the anglers and great for the fans. Now let's talk a little bit about what's coming up in this program. We're going to recap the exciting action on Kentucky Lake. You talk to our champion, and you'll talk to two other finalists as well and find out what worked. Kind of surprising at times.
It really surprised me. I know I figured it out about the third day when I got cut, and I got to asking questions. I said, how's these boys catching all these fish? And, you know, they were catching them on the old lake line, which is not, I mean, that's not unusual. But when a lake rises like Kentucky Lake and the water's only 70 degrees, you expect a lot of fish to still be in the shallow bushes. But boy, they proved me wrong.
We'll hear from Gary Yamamoto, also second-place finisher Davey Height, and the winner, Steve Kennedy, a young man who got his first win. And Larry, it was big for Steve Kennedy.
It was real big. He's got a neat history, and that was really big for that boy.
We've got a lot to look forward to on this edition of FLW Outdoors. Coming up next, we will recap the exciting action on Kentucky Lake.
Kentucky Lake, day one.
The fifth stop on the FLW Tour found Kentucky and Barkley Lakes as high as anyone can remember. Now, conventional thinking was the fish would be in the flooded bushes, but anglers who challenged convention had a better shot of making it out of the field of 175 and into the 10-man finals. Rick Marsh started Carolina rigging early, and we'd see much more of that as the tournament wore on. Then we found Larry Nixon clipping a Senko in the flooded brush. It was the biggest of Larry's 4 fish. With 11 pounds, he ended up 66th after day one. A much better day for Kevin Van Dam, 19.5 pounds and third place on a spinnerbait in shallow flooded areas.
Not all the fish in the lake have spawned yet, and I'm trying to concentrate on what I think are the areas where some of the fish might still be spawning.
Terry Baxley stood in second, and his bites came fishing dead slow. Day one's only 20-pound sack came from Wisconsin's Tom Mansour, mainly on a homemade jig in open water.
Kentucky Lake, day two.
On day two, 34th place David Dudley found his fish near the bank, while Randy Alexander was Carolina rigging and catching his own keeper fish. And the leaders continued to bring in nice bags of fish. Tom Mansour followed his leading stringer with 16 more pounds, and Van Dam brought in 18, mainly on a spinnerbait. He took the lead and made the finals for the first time this year. Joining Van Dam and Mansour in the finals, Gary Yamamoto, Terry Baxley, Todd Airy, Steve Kennedy, Davey Height, Terry Seagraves, Mike Sermon, and Jeffrey Thomas. The Snickers Big Bass Awards went to Cody Bird at 6'10", and Robert Beatty at 7'2".
Kentucky Lake, day three.
On day three, the 10 finalists fanned out across Kentucky Lake, some with 80-mile trips ahead. They had to deal with water levels that were still rising and the surprising emergence of Carolina rigging as the go-to method. Over to day 1 leader Tom Mansour, Carolina rigging a brush hog and keeping his hot hand going with a 3.5-pound smallmouth. At 5.5 pounds, Mansour had the 9 a.m. lead. Steve Kennedy was on a Carolina rigging pattern too. With catches only 4 minutes apart, he soon had 7.5 pounds and was right behind Mansour.
There he is.
Half an hour later, Kennedy had one of his best fish of the day, a 4.5-pound smallmouth. Soon, the second-year pro from Auburn, Alabama, fishing his first FLW final, was in the lead with 14 pounds. Davey Height was catching lots of fish, just no keepers. Finally, his 17th bass exceeded 15 inches, and unexplainably, Height was in the groove. Within 24 minutes, Height had a limit. He'd gone from 0 weight and last place to 16 pounds and first. Day 2 leader Kevin Van Dam was struggling. He had 9 pounds of fish, but fell from 1st to 10th place. 2 anglers had the hot hand on day 3, both Carolina rigging. Davey Height went on to catch an outstanding 19 pounds, only to be passed by Kennedy with a tournament and career high 23.
Kentucky Lake, day 4.
Day 4 was a 2-man race for the title, and while Davey Height caught well over 15 pounds, Steve Kennedy was unstoppable, adding an amazing 21 pounds 13 ounces to his total weight. When Height weighed his final fish, Kennedy had the tournament won with over 9.5 pounds of fish still to weigh. As we look at the numbers of the Stanley stats, 4 is the number of 20-pound stringers weighed in for the tournament. Steve Kennedy turned in 2 of them on the final 2 days when it counted the most. 10 pounds 1 ounce is the distance between Kennedy and second-place finisher Davey Height. And 48 is Kevin Van Dam's season ranking after his first top 10 of the season. With 1 tournament to go, the Van Daminator is online for a shot at the $1.5 million FLW Tour Championship. Van Dam won the Shop Vac Clean Sweep Award with the best weight from the first 2 days at 37 pounds 10 ounces. The Energizer Keeps On Going Award went to Jeffrey Thomas, who came back from 67th place on day 1 to make the cut and ultimately finish in 5th place. But the big winner of the week was the second-year pro with a first-class payday. Steve Kennedy put it all together for a weekend in Kentucky he'll never forget.
Welcome back to FLW Outdoors, and with me I've got Gary Yamamoto, our 9th place finisher. And Gary, this is kind of a special tournament to you because your boy was in that top 10 also.
Yeah, it was an interesting thing because I came over here to the tournament and he said he was coming, and I said, you know, let's go and pre-fish together. So we pre-fished and had a good time, and then a big surprise happened.
A big surprise, huh? Both of you made the top 10.
Both of us made the top 10, and I didn't know he was going to be a co-sponsor for the tournament. So here I am. I'm wearing his hat in an FLW tournament sponsored by my son. Goodness, this is a good one. Got one. You know, accidents do happen at times.
Let me talk to you a little bit about this special bait that you're using, and you've got it here, and I'm going to pull one out of the bag for you. This is a lot of people knows what it is. I mean, it's a very popular bait in the tournament circuits, and I'm sure you caught your fish on that, right?
Basically, I caught all my fish on it.
That's a Senko.
Yes. This is a Senko, and most people are either wacky worming it,
putting the hook in the middle.
Hook in the middle, or Texas rigging it with the hook in the head. One thing that I wanted to show people is that there are other ways of using the Senko. I've Texas rigged this bait with a fairly heavy tungsten sinker, about 5/8 or so. I found out that I could drop this thing behind someone that had flipped other things.
Right.
And get right down to the base of the buckbrush. And what I do would be flip it from the boat and just going straight down. Not casting it, trying to go straight down. And straight down, and once I hit the bottom, I pick it up once or twice, and I make that bait flip, and then let it rest again. And if there was a bass in there, he could not stand it. It sure been tough.
I've been fishing 27 years tournaments, and it's rare. And in fact, I can't recall an instance when the lake rose 7 foot that the fish went out instead of in. You know, rising water, usually fish go in.
Yeah.
But that's why I say nobody will ever know everything there is to know about bass fishing.
No, that's why it's so interesting that, you know, as long as you have fished and I have fished, we're still learning something every time. And in fact, this morning I said I had some time, so I got my notepad on and said, I'm going to start taking some notes because I'm getting too old to remember all this stuff.
Well,
what color did I use at that last?
Good, but I wouldn't have had a note that told me to move out when the water was rising.
No. I went into some tough wooded area and the toughest areas I could get into in order to go to that shallower spot, but they don't like that, I guess.
No.
This lake is, the fish is accustomed to moving, they're accustomed to the moving water, and they feel that it's going to go back down again. So,
Gary, I want to thank you for coming out and being on the show with me this morning, and congratulations again on a great tournament. And when we come back, we're going to be with Kentucky Pro Terry Bolton, and he's going to give you a tip on how to catch more fish.
Here's your Rubbermaid BFL recap. From the Great Lakes Division out of Clinton, Iowa, the winner, Curtis Samo, Preston, Illinois, 14 pounds, 14 ounces. Mississippi Division out of Columbus, Mississippi, the winner, Todd Ratcliffe of Meridian, 13 pounds, 12 ounces. Welcome back to FLW Outdoors and Kentucky Lake, a lake that had tons of fish for this event and also still gives us fishing lessons.
Oh, that's true. And oftentimes the difference between victory and defeat comes in sweating out the details. Kentucky Pro Terry Bolton shares this tip designed to give you more confidence and possibly more fish.
I've got a couple friends of mine from Arkansas, Scott Rook and Stephen Browning, that got me into painting weights several years ago. And I've kind of got a 3 or 4 step process that I go through to paint the weights. First, I'll dump them in rubbing alcohol. And then after I allow them to set in the alcohol for just a minute or two, I'll pour the alcohol off. Then I dump the weights onto a towel, take toothpicks, and I poke them into the back of the weight, and I'll set them up on a foam block. And after I got the weights onto the foam block, I'll allow them to dry just a second, make sure all the alcohol's off. Then I'll pick out whatever color I want to paint those weights, and I will spray paint them. And after I allow that to dry, then I'll get my 30-minute epoxy out, and I'll pour that onto a piece of paper, and I'll mix whatever color glitter that I might have, and then I'll apply the epoxy with the glitter to the weights and allow that to dry. And that's the way we come up with these real pretty worm weights. I feel like it's more of a confidence factor. At times I feel like it does make a difference, and you know, I think any time that you fish a bait with more confidence, you're going to catch more fish with it. You know, a lot of friends of mine make fun of me for fishing with a red weight on my plum worm, but you know, I've gotten to where I've fished the bait like that for so many years. If I don't have that red weight, you know, I just feel almost naked, like I'm not going to catch anything. So I think mentally it makes a big difference, and I think it allows me to catch a few more fish through the day.
Whoever said nice guys finish last never met Arkansas pro George Cochran. He's a true gentleman, a great ambassador for the sport, and he's a former champion right here on Kentucky Lake thanks to a good deed.
One of my funny stories is the FLW Championship, Kentucky Bartley, that I won a few years back. The last day of competition, the top 5, the cameraman in the back of the boat, we were fishing in this Pirates Cove. Well, this lady on the bank saw that he had a camera, and she wanted to get on TV, so she hollered and said, if you come over here and take my picture, I'll let you have one of my famous fried pies. And the cameraman said, boy, I'd like to have one. I said, all right. So I eased the boat over there, and right when we got to the lady where she was going to give him a fried pie, I flipped my jig right next to the bank where I haven't fished at all, wasn't even attempting to fish, and I caught a 5-pounder. And that helped me win that tournament. I hate to tell everybody that, but that fried pie is what helped me win that tournament.
Coming up next on FLW Outdoors, Larry Nixon sits down with second-place finisher Davey Height. Finds out how Height caught fish after fish after fish on Kentucky Lake.
Welcome back to FLW Outdoors, and I'm here with our second place finisher, Davey Height. Tremendous job, buddy.
Well, it was a fun week. Just didn't quite pull off the win, but second isn't so bad.
No, well, I don't know. I'm always disappointed when I don't win, but let me tell you, second is good. You did good. Let's look right here just a little bit at this footage of where you were fishing, and I want you to describe to me what you think these fish were doing.
Well, Larry, you know, I've come to Barkley Lake and Kentucky Lake and high water, and I flipped bushes for 2.5 days, and I just didn't have a real good practice going. The last day of practice, I went to Kentucky Lake and started fishing off the bank, and got on a little deal fishing back in these creeks where the water was just a little clear from the water coming out of those creeks, and fishing the old lake line, the edge, you know, these gravel bars and stuff in the creek, and fish were just stacked up and just unbelievable. I've never seen anything like this, for the water to be so good in the cover up in those bushes and trees, and these fish be sitting outside. It's totally going against everything I've ever learned about bass fishing, these fish being outside, all this cover with the rising water. But you know, I love to flip and pitch as much as anybody, but you know, I think I'm halfway decent at it, and I spent like 2.5 days of my practice in those trees, and it just wasn't, I knew there were too many fish in this lake. They weren't all in there.
Outside that old lake line, there was no cover except maybe gravel or rocks, and the fish were right on that gravel.
And it makes a natural little, you know, a little contour change where you have this erosion in that old lake line. So it's like a hump at 8 feet all the way around the lake, and there was certain little places in these creeks that these fish were holding. And it was gravel. I had 2 spots that it was very outside bushes, the outermost bushes on the old lake line, and these fish were really holding up in it.
Basically, you caught everything Carolina rigging and on a jig.
Yeah, you know, I use a variety of baits to try to get a big bite, but most of the fish I weighed came on a rattleback jig. I caught a lot of fish on Carolina rig, and on the Carolina rig, this is a bacon rind, is one of the baits I used. I used a lizard, I used a ring fry, I used a lot of different baits, trying to find a bait that would catch me those quality fish, because you know, on Saturday I landed 71 fish. My camera boat driver counted how many fish I landed. And,
amazing.
You know, and you just keep searching for a way to catch that bigger fish, and end up the jig, and I use a black blue and a chartreuse pumpkin. And the jig is the bait that I caught my bigger fish on. I caught more fish on the Carolina rig. You can catch them on a lot of different baits, but you know, there's some big smallmouth. Hopefully I'll get a hold of one of those today. But your hook to land percentage and ratio on Carolina rig so much better than, say, a crankbait. They'd bite a crankbait. The bigger fish would bite a jig and those kind of things. But you know, these fish, they're stacked up in there and they're feeding, and you can just land them so much better on a Carolina rig than some other things.
And when we come back, we'll have more with Davey Height.
Well, it's just a little sweet spot in the creek channel here. It's a big old creek, a lot of fish coming here to spawn, and use this area. The river muddied up. I think it pushed a lot of fish in these creeks. But instead of going in the trees, they stopped a little shy of them, and that's what had me fooled for quite a while, and a lot of other people in the tournament, because it just doesn't make sense for them to be where they're at. For 4 days, I was experimenting, trying to find a big fish bait, and I didn't find one quite as good as Steve did, a big fish bait.
Right.
But I used a lot of different baits. This is one still tied on the rod from yesterday. You can see the paint wore off the head. You can tell there's
Gravel
on
just
gravel
sanded
bottom.
it right off.
That's right. Is there any rule against gluing them together? Make a total of 15 inches? This is fun, but we're just not making any money.
Davey, you've been was Bass Angler of the Year last year, a past FLW championship winner, and this year's been a tough season for you too. I know it has for me also. We've been gone so much, and this tournament's got to be special for you.
It really is. You know, I've had a tough year after a phenomenal year last year, but that's fishing. It's a very humbling sport, and it's good for me to see Larry Nixon not winning every tournament and see that you're human, and I know I've proven this past year that I'm human.
Now, you was also going on a pretty good boat ride, I understand.
Yeah, it's about 80 miles each way, and Kentucky Lake can get really rough. You didn't need a lot of fishing time because they were so stacked up. You know, a lot of times you can't make those long runs because you just take yourself out of the tournament because you only got a couple hours to fish. But boy, when you got there, you didn't need very long to start catching fish.
That's something else. That's the kind of fishing holes we dream of.
You bet. It doesn't happen very often.
No. It's amazing the bass that Kentucky Lake produced this week. Probably 5 or 6 years ago, it was a pretty tough lake.
Yeah, I remember hearing tournaments, you know, 10, 11 pounds.
That's right.
Tournaments. Now, 10, 11 pounds won't win a tournament this day.
Well, I hope it's on our schedule again next year, and I want to congratulate you on a great tournament. And when we come back, we'll have more from FLW Outdoors.
Well, it's been a great week. We've, you know, had conditions like I've never seen before. I've never seen the water come up this much in this length of time. Caught so many fish, my hands are absolutely raw. Probably caught about 70 today, the last day of the tournament. And you know, no matter what happens, I've had a good week. Caught a lot of fish, had a lot of fun, and I'll make a decent paycheck, that's for sure. Anytime you can make the top 10, I'd like to win. We're going to see what's going to happen here in just a little bit.
Here's your Rubbermaid RCL Walleye League recap. South Dakota Division, Lake Francis Case. The winner, Reed Whidvey of Pierre, South Dakota, 12 pounds, 8 ounces.
And welcome back to FLW Outdoors, coming to you from beautiful Kentucky Lake.
You know, Taylor, one of our finalists, Tom Mansour, out of La Crosse, Wisconsin, dominates the BFL Great Lakes Division. He's a 3-time season champion there. He finished 3rd in the Everstart Northern Division. He's a force on any northern waterway, but this week he proved he can also do it on Kentucky Lake.
And he figured him out here in a variety of ways. Let's look back at Tom Mansour's final round on Kentucky Lake.
Today I'm going to try and hit some spots I haven't fished yet that I pre-fished and see if I can find some bigger fish that haven't been hammered yet. But they could have been fished the first 2 days already and I don't know it. So we're going to find out today. We'll see if we get bit here in these first 3 spots, and if not, we're still going to have a great day because we're out here fishing. My daughters are all excited. The newspaper does a big front page story every day about how I'm doing. It's pretty exciting. I was worried for a minute there. Well, this was a game plan today. Find a place I hadn't fished, throw a crankbait when I find them. Oh yeah. Fat little one. Got to take care of your fish in these tournaments. FLW has a 99.9% live release on these fish. And they'll penalize you if you bring in a dead one, so we take great care to not hurt one of these fish. There's an old saying, you never leave fish to go to fish. There's keepers here. So you just gotta, when you're getting them every cast, you don't leave. Ooh, see? Nice one. Ah, now we're having fun. Dandy. Oofta. There's a dandy. You don't know how good it feels to have a game plan work. Because you do question yourself at every point of the adventure. And every tournament's an adventure. Oh, there's the bite. Oh, back to missing. No, he ran with it. 26. Now you know why I went to the new spots first, so that we'd get a limit for sure. These spots have all been fished now, most of them, and you might get bit and you might not. I knew if I went to the new spots, I might get bit good on one of them, and we did, thank God.
Monsoor turned in 15 3/4 pounds at the weigh-in for a 2-day final round of 29 pounds, 11 ounces. Good for a third-place finish, his highest ever.
You thought it was fun to watch Tom Monsoor catch fish? Just wait till you see Steve Kennedy. He's up next with Larry Nixon.
That's 100 grand right there. Welcome back to FLW Outdoors, and with me I've got a tremendous champion, believe me folks, Steve Kennedy. Man, you did a great job, and I want to know something. Have you seen this?
Oh, yes, we saw it this morning at Waffle House.
Oh, that's the first I've seen it this morning, and I know you've got to be excited.
It was an incredible day. Last 2 days have been the best tournament days of my life, and they just happened to happen with the FLW Championship.
There's one thing I want you to know. This man fished out an aluminum boat last year and fished the FLW Tour. What size motor?
50 horse.
A 50 horse motor. So you don't have to have a big flashy boat to win, but it helps, don't it?
It does help. Some of the places you want to go, that 50 horse won't get you, but other places it will.
And then this year you got you a Ranger 350.
Right.
That's a fairly old model too.
Right. It's 15 years old. So.
And how big a motor?
150, and I can get around.
Now tell me about this little fishy spot that you found. It says here, Kennedy hits fishy spot. Evidently that spot was loaded.
Hey, it was. When we got in there, that first 2 hours maybe, on the first tournament day, we caught fish just about every cast. And figured out, you know, you could work out there 100 yards, 200 yards. We had no idea going into this tournament how many fish were out there. But
now, was the bottom real flat? I mean, was it a rough area that just had a big feeding flat there?
It wasn't perfectly flat. There was, you know, it was 8 to 10 foot. There was some kind of slope to it, but it was gravel, hard bottom. You had to find that hard bottom in every pocket. Huh? We got to get more excited? Are we not hooping and hollering enough? Man. You want to see a streak naked down the length of the boat? It's actually a pattern we've done before. We call it a green water pattern. I'm probably telling too much here. Dad showed it to me many years ago, but anytime you get a flood event, when you get the fish can't really stay on the river channel coming up so fast, you get these tremendous schools of fish just start moving, don't really settle anywhere, just out in the middle of the pockets. And you got to be there at the right time of day too.
I understand that you caught a lot of fish on a Carolina rig, and there was 2 different baits that you threw mostly on the Carolina rig.
Right. I made the cut throwing the Zoom brush hog. The baby brush hog seemed to catch the smallmouth, and then you could put on a Zoom trick worm and catch largemouth.
It's just straight tail worm, right?
Yeah, the trick worm. But then my third day partner pulled out a Cinco. There he is. Ooh, yeah. Big smallmouth. Yeah. He'd have made.
They like it in Cincos, ain't they?
Yeah.
They eat them up.
Cincos rule.
Now, once you got your limit on soft plastics, and I mean, even though you did catch some of your big fish on that, you utilized another lure to catch some of your real big fish,
right.
didn't you?
After that, I ended up going to the third day I used this fat-free shad that I'd painted up, and then the last day I ended up catching some of my biggest fish on a Rapala DT10.
Custom painted.
Custom painted by Brian out of North Carolina, and then I'd hand-painted that one before I came up here.
You know, it's amazing that a lot of times when you find a sweet spot like that, a moving bait, if you can get them to bite a moving bait, you'll catch the bigger fish.
Right. I love throwing a craymaker, but I was working it really hard, almost burning it at times and ripping it and stopping it, and it's a good little bait.
Could you feel bottom with it?
Yeah, you'd bump bottom every once in a while. If you touch something pretty hard, you'd stop it and just sit there and wait, and lots of times it'd hit it there. Or,
when you started.
But yeah, you could hit it, or if you hit a grass patch, you know, you'd stop it or rip it through, and just. But the key was just that working it hard, just jerk. You pop it and stop it, and then when you load up again, lots of times he's there. Don't let it sit there too long. Don't let him get a good look at it, really, is the key. Just make him react to it.
Now, you do know I've got to ask you one question.
What's that?
Are you going to go buy you a new boat, a bigger boat?
That's not going to happen right off the bat, no. I may buy my wife a new truck or something, but...
That's nice. I like that.
After all the miles I've put on hers.
Steve, congratulations again, and I'm sure you're going to put that money to good use.
Yeah, I think I'll go get me a few more crankbaits.
Probably a few like that one.
Yeah,
yeah. And when we come back, we'll have more from FLW Outdoors.
I don't know what to say. Let's go around the boat once. Maybe not. Woo! Ooh. 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 That's more than 5. Woo! Get this one. Are you sure you want to get it? Oh, never done this before. Oh. Woo! Good. Oh. 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 I'm having fun.
You know, Jimmy, I want to know a little bit about how you got started in this and progressed from, you know, started fishing at 3 years old all the way up to where you're at now, FLW Touring Pro.
So my father took me saltwater fishing. I grew up in New Jersey, and I was always fishing the ocean, always going fishing every day. And we moved up to Massachusetts, and we were trout fishing, and I hooked a live frog on, threw the frog out, caught a 5-pounder, a little ultralight rod, and that was the beginning.
But, you know, starting at BFLs, working your way up to Everstar, eventually into FLW, makes you more comfortable when you finally get to the FLW. And I think it's shown with a lot of your success that you had at Okeechobee last year, right, and even at Champlain.
Yeah, it set the stage for, you know, how to you know, present yourself and how to, you know, act and you know, and how to be this professional fisherman, and you know, rather than just jump right into it, I wanted to learn a little bit about it, and that was the best way to go, and it's really worked out well for me.
Oh my God, yeah! Woo, that's a fish! God, that's the biggest fish I've caught in my life.
Well, I tell you what, I think you're going to have great success. I've been watching you over the last couple of years, and you seem to be doing really well. And I'm sure I'll see you in Richmond, and you know, you're going to have a good career ahead of you, especially with that worm.
Thank you.
Good luck out there.
Welcome back to FLW Outdoors. Now, next week on FLW Outdoors, we'll be bringing you the exciting results of the BFL All-American. And Taylor, last year, that was when Steve Kennedy finished 3rd in the All-American. It proved to be a breakout for his career.
Well, it's a big check for these guys, $100,000. It's also great national exposure, plus the winner fishes the FLW Tour the final year. That is really big. Time now for our viewers to get involved, a segment we call Ask a Pro. And this question comes from Tina Miller of Sparta, Tennessee, and she asks, I need some tips on catching bass that are guarding fry in the late spring. I've had no luck catching these fish. Well, Tina, here's your answer, and it comes from Stanley Pro Scott Martin.
Great question, Tina. You know, I live down on Lake Okeechobee, and I'm fishing 6 months out of the year around the spawn, and there's fry usually all over the lake. One of the best ways that I've found to catch bass under fry is with a floating worm, usually rigged wacky style. I usually hook the finesse worm in its middle, in the egg sac in the middle, and I'll actually cast the worm to the ball of fry and actually let it sink down very slowly. That will usually produce the strike. If that doesn't work, try a jerk bait such as a Rapala and throw it in and work it very slow on the surface. That will usually produce your best fish.
Well, Taylor, the remaining schedule for the 2003 season is down to 1 in the regular season. Lake Wheeler in June, and that's going to be a final push for the anglers to try to make that top 48 for season championship.
They're all pointing toward that road to Richmond, Carlson. And what the rest of the season is about now is the road to Richmond, September 10th through 13th on the James River. The winner will take home $500,000. There'll be a big outdoor show involved.
For more information, go to richmondva.org or, of course, FLWOutdoors.com. I think the Richmond event's going to be huge for all these anglers. Also going on Kentucky Lake, a big event sponsored by Stratus, and it benefits a great cause. To tell you about it, Dan Moorhead and Craig Powers.
It's a chance for us to give back to the troops that are providing us with all the freedoms that we love to do. You know, and being out of Nashville and Fort Campbell, they're all family. Well, we know a lot of the people that are overseas.
How many of those guys over there you think would trade places with us? You know, we're making a living catching fish, and they're protecting this country so we can make a living doing this. And you know, you can't put a price tag on that. That's priceless.
The Stratus tribute to the troops was a big success. Almost $15,000 was raised to benefit Operation Eagle's Nest, providing support to soldiers and families assigned to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Bill Hinson and Scott Lefevers of Nashville won the first prize of a Stratus 185 with an Evinrude motor.
And at each of our tournaments along the FLW Tour, I try to take some behind-the-scenes photos in our Fuji Fine Pick segment. As we begin this week's edition, we focus on the big water of Kentucky Lake and the big money for our new champion. Kentucky Lake provided plenty of water for the FLW anglers. This is the parking lot, underwater, and that no parking sign wasn't really needed. The morning boat check took place on an island, and launching your boat from the parking lot instead of a ramp provided little angle for anglers like Lowry's pro, Jim Moyna. All the tournament attention was on Evinrude pro, Dan Moorhead. The Kentucky native finished 55th, but he still holds the Land O'Lakes Angler of the Year lead. But this tournament was a two-man race between Steve Kennedy and Davey Height. And in the end, it was Kennedy signing the autographs as tournament champion.
Carlton, beautiful pictures from Kentucky Lake. We now look forward to our final event of the regular season, Lake Wheeler, next month.
And don't forget, next week on FLW Outdoors, we'll be with you from Mobile, Alabama for the 2003 BFL All-American. Thanks for watching this week on FLW Outdoors.